This is the smallest Mac that Apple has ever made. This is the new Mac Mini, and it packs a punch. What's up everybody, Brian Tong here, and yes, we're talking all things M4 Mac Mini. This is the full review, and Apple sent us, this is the M4 Pro version of the Mac Mini for us to do some testing and really get a grasp of what it's capable of. So we're gonna do some benchmarks. We're gonna give you some real world results, not just saying, oh, it's twice as fast. We'll tell you how much faster it is. But let's talk about the design, right? This is an incredible design for a machine. Everyone loves when there's any kind of redesigns. This is a 5-inch by 5-inch computer. Really super computer that you can do pretty much anything you hope to and expect to, because this is packed with an M4 or an M4 Pro inside. Now, let's just get some of the specs out of the way and look at the connectivity here. On this backside, you got power, then you have Ethernet, you have HDMI, and then 3 Thunderbolt ports, depending on your configuration. M4 chip, that gives you 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports. M4 Pro chip gives you 3 Thunderbolt 5 chips. That allows you to connect to up to 3 displays in addition to this machine, 6K resolution at 60 Hertz, all right? On the front side here, then we have 2 USB-C ports and the 3.5mm headphone jack. Now, I'm gonna flip this over and give you guys a good look from the top here. You see the Mac Mini logo. Yes, you see that power button. I'm gonna tell you right now, I think people are making a way bigger fuss about this power button. Yes, I had to turn on. It is uncomfortable to kind of reach around and turn on, but how many times you turn your computer on or off in a day? I actually turned my laptop on once, I closed the lid or I let it fall asleep, and I don't know the last time other than a restart. I just don't constantly turn my machines on or off. So the power button here, yes, it is awkward. Yes, it's not normal, but you don't really hit that power button that often. So in the grand scheme of things, not too big of a deal. I think people that want to yell about it, continue to yell about it. Also, something this small and this compact, really cool ventilation system here. It sucks in air, it goes into all the different levels of the system to keep it cool, and then shoots that air out the base, the warm air, to continue this kind of cycle. So performance-wise, I didn't hear anything. Like, this was, again, it's Apple Silicon. It performs so incredibly well. You just, I mean, of course it's not plugged in. I was gonna like, you don't hear anything. Yeah, you just don't hear anything. Now, if we want to talk about the hardware, Apple sent us an M4 Pro with the 14-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. This is loaded with 48 gigs of unified memory and then 1 terabyte hard drive space. The base model Mac Mini starts off with a 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU, and starts at $599. But the biggest question is, how does this perform? How about it performs just as well as the best computers you'll find? I didn't feel any lag. I never felt that this machine chugged. You know, I do a lot of video editing and graphics. None of that felt any different than what my M1 Max MacBook Pro does. So this is a high performing machine, but let's, you know what, instead of me talking about it, let's dig into some of the numbers to tell you how good this really was. All right, so let's start off with Geekbench 6 benchmark results. Now, I have a list of different Macs starting as far back as the M1 Mac Mini. You can see the M2, the M3, then we have the M1 Max series and the M2 Ultra series. You're gonna get every piece of flavor here, but let's focus right on the center at the M4 Pro Mac Mini that we have here. I ran this test 10 times, so I really get the best average score here when I run my benchmarks. Single core score, 3,604. Multi-core score, 22,036. Now, when you look at that, what does this tell you? Well, we know that this is a 14-core CPU, so it really does great with multi-core score performance. When you look at it single core, it falls in where you pretty much expect it to. It's better than an M1, M2, M3, so it should technically be the highest single core score offering, and that shows that right here. Now, let's go over to Geekbench 6 Metal GPU performance. Again, we run this test 10 times. You look at the different machines that I've accumulated over time, and these are all using Geekbench 6. So let's again focus in on the center. You'll see a big jump from the standard M1, M2, M3. Once you go M4 Pro, remember this is not an M4, but an M4 Pro, the GPU performance, this has a 20-core GPU, skyrockets. So something like the M3 has a 47,000 Geekbench score. M4 Pro has a 110,000 Geekbench scores. It's more than double, not even a little close to 3 times as fast. But what I found really interesting is look at the M4 Pro score right next to the M1 Max score. They're in a dead heat, 110,000 versus 116,000. So they're pretty close in GPU performance. So it just shows you that over time, the M4 Pro has now pretty much caught up and very close to the M1 Max performance that we first saw. And that was an incredible machine. Now, I also want to show you, some of you are curious, like, okay, what exactly were in these machines? Maybe I should have shown this at the beginning, whatever. So check this out. You can see exactly the CPU and GPU cores of all these machines we're comparing it to, right? Starting from an M1 base model Mac Mini all the way to an M2 Ultra Max Studio. You can see just how crazy the M2 Ultra Max Studio is, because M4 Pro, right smack in the middle, 14 core CPU, 20 core GPU, that's the highest that it goes. M2 Ultra, remember this, guys and gals, 24 core CPU, 60 core GPU. So that thing is a freak of nature. You also see the different unified memory configurations. I only show you this comparison because I think it's really important to know what exactly we're comparing this to. It's not all apples to apples, it's some apples to oranges and other apples. So you gotta really see, okay, the specs aren't the same, but we're trying to give you as best of a comparison as we can. So yes, benchmarks are benchmarks. They mean something because they give you a point of reference, but they don't really matter, because what matters to me is real world tests. Now, I've seen your comments before, and all you say is, why do you compare video rendering outputs when that doesn't matter to me? Well, it depends on what you do. I would argue most people word processing, email, web surfing, some photos, some video light work. None of this really matters because Apple Silicon is so good, but when you want to get in the nitty gritty, this is where it really matters. So let's look at our first example here, Adobe Premiere, the latest version, with the latest version of macOS Sequoia 15.1. We're gonna do a 13-minute video export, and let's look at the results here. And this pretty much aligns with what I would have thought based on the earlier benchmarks. So you start at a 13-minute video. The M1 does not have Apple's media engine in it at all, so it's not surprising that M1 came in with the longest export time at 10 minutes and 38 seconds for a 13-minute video. If you look here, as you keep on moving up, each model, and this is what's really crazy, each model improves its score as you go along the different processors over time. So M1 to M2 to M3, then there's kind of a big gap because we don't have any scores for basic M4 yet, but M4 Pro, 6 minutes and 35 seconds for a 13-minute Adobe Premiere export. And then you jump up over to the M1 Max MacBook Pro, that was around 4 minutes and 20 seconds. You go all the way to the top end to the M2 Ultra, we're talking about, what, 2 minutes and 15 seconds for an export of a 13-minute video? That is bonkers. That machine also costs a whole lot of money. But you can see that this guy right here falls really kind of right up to the border of, it's kind of creeping up on M1 Max performance like territory when it comes to video exports. All right, now let's look at something like a little longer video. This is an Adobe Premiere 45-minute video export. This thing had something around like 20 layers of audio and video. The timeline is just stupid crazy, but again here, you can see the M1 with no media engine for a 45-minute video. That took an hour and 44 freaking minutes. No one wants to play around with that. But here, look, the M4 Pro, performance-wise, is just under M1 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro. You got the M4 Pro Mac Mini, which is what we're comparing, right? What we're reviewing, 23 minutes and 39 seconds. M1 Max machine, 23 minutes and 29 seconds. So we're only talking about a 10-second difference now. Of course, it's been, what, 3 years from M1 to M4, but an M4 Pro, basically 10 seconds slower than an M1 Max with a long video like 45 minutes. Now, I know most people do not create anything like that. That's why I think the 13-minute video test is a little more relevant, but this at least shows us how close and how powerful this is, and it's getting, again, right up there with M1 Max performance. And then before we get off this graph, just take a look at the M2 Ultra 8-minute, 51-second export for a 45-minute video. That is freaking stupid. Next up, this is always a fun one because this is Final Cut Pro video export, right? We're going to do Apple ProRes 422 HQ. This is where hardware and software are optimized. Now, if you're not familiar with Final Cut Pro, it does the rendering in the background while your project is being edited. That's why the export times are so ridiculous. Again, let's look at just a few years ago, the M1 Mac Mini for a 15-minute video, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. To me, that's way too long for Final Cut Pro. But then look at as we move up with the different quality of processors, the M4 Pro, okay, the M4 Pro Mac Mini can export a 15-minute video in Final Cut Pro, latest version of Mac OS, Sequoia 15.1, in 1 minute and 9 seconds. Then the M1 Max, 55 seconds. So you look at that, we're talking about basically a 13-second difference, I think I did the math right, between M4 Pro and M1 Max. And then you want to get crazy, yeah, a 15-minute video on Final Cut Pro exports with the M2 Ultra, it was like 37 seconds. That's stupid. And yes, Apple people have been telling me, Brian, you got to get on Final Cut Pro. That alone, right, those numbers that you see there, it definitely makes you think, yeah, I probably should learn it, but I'm just so efficient with Premiere, something's gonna get me there. But yeah, Final Cut Pro, you are a beast. So what are the takeaways from this Mac Mini? Again, you know, I am singing its praises. The design is so incredible for what you can do. I would say, what am I missing? To be honest with you, and I know Apple's kind of doing this on purpose, if only it had just one SD card slot, right? Just one. We know the Mac Studio has one. This one does not. But clearly Apple's like, you want to go a little pro level, you want a little more space, we're gonna put that. I would have loved, I would have even sacrificed a USB-C port just to get an SD card slot. I think then this is something that every pro would be like, that Mac Mini is what I want to go for. But if every pro says that, then they're not gonna get a Mac Studio. So obviously, I think there's some strategery going on here with Apple not putting an SD card slot on it. Otherwise, this is an incredible machine. Let's say even starting at the base model, $599 for an M4 with an 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, this machine will be able to do 95% of anything anyone wants to do other than high-end graphics work, high-end video editing, rendering 3D models. This can do it. You can obviously go higher at a higher level if you want to do that even more efficiently, but this is arguably, right? Not only is it Apple's smallest Mac, this is the best small PC at this size, and when you compare it to what else is on the market. Maybe the drawback for people that really want to get into gaming, this can handle gaming pretty well, but the reality is that Apple's game library still just doesn't compare to anything close to what's on the PC side, and the PC side has really been optimized. I mean, there's a reason why I own a PC for gaming and then I use a Mac for all my creative work. I think that's where we've seen the split, and it's stayed that way for years because of how these machines are made and what they cater to. But ultimately, this is a good Apple. This is a great machine. I can't get over how small and cute it is. Is that a reason to get a machine? I mean, maybe. But this is a Mac, it's gonna sit on your desk. You could also arguably call this the most portable Mac that we've ever seen. I could take this on work trips, just bounce around from my home. I do a lot of travel like that. Maybe I don't need a laptop all the time. Maybe I'm in 2 locations. I go up to Cupertino for the events, plug into my monitor there at my parents' house, and then when I come back here to LA, plug into my monitor here. This is a great workstation, super small, super compact, and I dig it.